Hello there, this is Welsh ASMR 82. Hey, how you doing? So today's video is one that I've thought of doing loads of times and I wanted to do for about a year, but I was a bit scared of the comment section and what the comment section would be like. And then I thought, do you know what, I don't care. Because today we're going to talk about potential changes in the world map in 100 years' time. So, because of people's passion for their countries, their regions, their identity, it's a fairly controversial video. I'm going to say that from the off. However, I'm sort of putting it in this way that I am not promoting any of these concepts. I'm simply reporting, so don't shoot the messenger in the comment section. Okay, I've started deliberately on this double-page spread of this magnificent World Atlas by Phillips because Scottish independence has been something that has been so close over the last 20-25 years and is still being discussed about regularly in UK news. So we'll talk about that one to begin with. And then we'll broach Ireland, which is a lot more rage-baiting. Okay. Scotland. Scotland actually had a referendum before we had the referendum on Brexit. And I can't actually remember. I didn't engage with it too much at the time because I wasn't interested before Brexit in politics at all. But I was very interested in general of the potential of this new European country that was about to be created. Very briefly, Scotland is a constituent part of the UK. It's the second largest country both in surface area and population. Two of the largest cities in the UK are here, Glasgow, and the smaller but capital, Edinburgh. And basically the vast majority of the population of Scotland live in this belt here, curiously. Aberdeen is the largest urban centre on the British Isles. There are, of course, ones more northerly, but it has a comparatively large population and much larger than any of those comparatively that far north. Incidentally, you can see John O'Groats here, and there is this challenge to travel from John O'Groats all the way to the tip of Cornwall and Land's End, it's called. So John O'Groats to Land's End, and people sometimes cycle it. It's quite a challenge. The northerlymost point of the mainland to the southerlymost point. So you have the UK, which is currently made up of Scotland, England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And yeah, we've had calls for Scotland to leave. When they had the referendum, of course, as you can probably guess, it didn't pass. There was a majority that wanted to stay in the Union. But it's something that still gets talked about fairly regularly, so it's not inconceivable to consider that Scotland could be an independent nation away from the UK in the future. It's worth noting that lots of people that voted to remain in the UK did so on the premise that they would still be in the European Union, and then we had the Brexit vote, so that group of people were disgruntled. But I read something fairly recently that said those behind and supporting independence in Scotland had marginally dropped over the last sort of couple of years. But there's still a considerable following. I'd be really interested to know, if you are Scottish, whether you feel comfortable talking about whether you support independence or not. So that's Scotland. We'll start off with that one. We can see the Orkney Islands here as well, which is just out of shot. But curiously, here are the Shetland Islands. For context, this little picture here, I'm going to zoom in. Oh no, no, because it'll affect that. It's way further north. Actually, sort of not that far from the Faroe Islands in Norway. And I read this article that said that the local council was exploring the idea. It's a little bit tongue-in-cheek. I don't think it's very serious, but it seems this video is all about this topic. Because it used to be part of the Kingdom of Norway, or maybe not the kingdom, but yeah, Norway. And then it entered into the UK, and so there was a minority calling for it to leave the UK and rejoin Norway, which I thought was quite interesting. Okay, deep breath everyone. This is very contentious. This is one of the reasons I kind of was scared to do this video. Okay, this is the island of Ireland. I say both words the same in my pronunciation, but Americans and Irish people pronounce the R a lot stronger, so it would be Ireland. An island called Ireland. But I'm Welsh, so I say them both the same. Island, island. And as I talked about earlier on, Northern Ireland is currently a part of the UK. And there's a lot of historical reasons for this, and it's also to do with religion and sort of ethnic origins and lots of messy things that I don't want to go into in this video. And so there is a growing call for the reunification of Ireland. So, quick history lesson, the UK invaded Ireland, all of it, and eventually got expelled, but in the treaty I think kept this northern part, therefore splitting the island, or the country, into two constituent parts: Northern Ireland, which resides within the UK, and the Republic of Ireland, often referred to colloquially in Britain as Southern Ireland. It broke them up into two different parts. And Ireland itself, I'm going to refer to the Republic of Ireland as Ireland. Ireland itself is a constituent part of the EU. It has the euro, although I read somewhere that it's not part of the UN because they don't want to get caught into any conflict, I think that was the expression. And Ireland, lovely place, absolutely adore it. Been many times. Loveliest people on the planet. So yeah, there's a growing sort of voice that wants to have the reunification. So this is a different one. This is actually not separation and independence, but actually the reunification of something that was at one point together and then separated. And we'll be visiting this idea constantly throughout the video. There are other countries where unification is actually more likely than further independence and sort of breaking up. I read an article on this as well, and it said that the vast majority, I think, I don't want to make numbers up, but let's say 70% of people polled in the Republic said that they supported unification of the two, whereas it was much lower, something like 30% in Northern Ireland. But there are certain treaties in place, which means that if you are in Northern Ireland and you see yourself as being Irish rather than from the UK, British, then you can obtain an Irish passport, and you can play for Irish in sports and the Olympics. You are considered to be Irish or British, depending on your preference. And as such, as an extension of that, and just from a very, very long treaty, despite the fact that the UK left the European Union and therefore closed its borders to the Freedom of Movement Act, which meant that prior to that, British people could just move to France or Spain or Italy, Germany, Netherlands, wherever, and people from those countries could come to the UK as well, just, didn't have to have a visa, just walk straight in. That still remains between our two countries because that predates Brexit. So Irish people can just come to the UK. They don't even need a passport. They need ID to get on the boat. And I think, I don't know if it's changed, but flying, I think maybe you need a passport for flying, but definitely on the boat you don't. My brother went across on his driver's license. So every other nation, with Britain, you have to have a passport, but I think Ireland you don't. And if I wanted to, and I would like to, I can just move to Ireland as well, without a visa, without a sort of permit or a job. I can just literally just move there, and vice versa. So yeah, we have this pre-existing relationship. Weirdly, bearing in mind that Ireland itself hasn't been under the control of the British in 100 years or something. If you ask people in Britain, they often misunderstand and think that the Republic of Ireland is still part of Great Britain and the United Kingdom, which irks. I have a lot of Irish friends. It very much upsets them. So I'm very aware that it's not part of the United Kingdom, guys, don't worry. I have to say, the last time I went there was a week before COVID. I was house hunting, so I nearly moved to Ireland, and I was just enamoured. Just a lovely place. You should definitely go. Very much. Okay. I'll do a quick note on France, because whilst France is an amalgamation of lots of different things, such as the Celtic area of Brittany here, and Normandy, which has a very, very small, both have very small independence movements. You also have the Basque country down here, which is part of the Greater Basque region with the Basque country in Spain. And some other things as well, like Monaco is technically an independent country, but sort of is a part of France for lots of other reasons. And Corsica, where there is also a small independence movement, because Corsica was once more related and a part of Italy than France. It's where Napoleon was born, I believe. And at the time, I don't think it was in France. I think at the time when Napoleon was born, it was possibly part of Italy, or the Papal States, or whatever they wasn't at the time. Because Italy sort of came across here. I think Nice was a part of whatever this Papal State was, Lombardy or whatever. But I don't think any of them will become independent, because France's situation is very much of complete oppression on any individuality. France's motto is you're French and everyone speaks French and we're all one, and that is what you sort of need to focus on. It's not about individual characteristics. For example, up in Lille, the region is very similar to sort of Belgium. It's quite flat, there are lots of canals, it looks a little bit like the Netherlands. It was technically a part of that greater region one point in the past, but yeah, I don't see any at any stage that would like move and become part of Belgium or Netherlands or something. France is a very tight-knit process, even to the extent of there's like a list of acceptable names you can name your children, and if you do not name them that, then you can go to court. I read an article about someone who gave their child a Breton name, a Celtic name, and the parents were taken to court and told, no, you have to change your child's name to one of the, Pierre, Jacques, whatever, because you can't have a name that's not on the list, even though they were Breton speakers living in Breton, not allowed. So I just don't see any opportunity for individual powers, sort of, what's it called, like devolved governments, starting up and having more local control. I just don't see it with France. Okay, Spain. Spain is a little less complicated. So Spain is also a country made up of lots of different constituent parts, like Galicia in the north here, which was a Celtic region, but is it's the wettest part of Spain, and it's where people speak the language that became Portuguese. So it's in between Spanish and in between Portuguese. It's called Gallego. Very pretty language. You also have Andalusia down the south, which is very proud of its Moorish heritage and individuality, different type of accent of Spanish. You have Valencia here, which again has its different language, Valencia. And then you have the Basque country and Catalonia. And both of those have in the past attempted or even succeeded. I think Catalonia said that it was independent for one day and then went back into Spain. They also had, within the last 10 years, a referendum on independence, and it was seen as illegal, by the central government, and police were sent in, and people were thrown out of voting booths. The Basque country actually had a terrorist group to try and force the central government to allow them to be an independent nation. So both of those have greater history in terms of independence. The Basque country was around long before Spain. Catalonia was its own country, which had parts all the way down the coast, on the islands here, on I think Sardinia, and in Naples. So it had a very rich history and became a part of the Kingdom of Spain. So there are historical reasons for this. But currently Spain is, one constituent part. And there's, in most regions, there is a complete lack of desire for independence. I haven't heard much since the terrorist organisation ETA devolved, sort of disappeared, about independence in the Basque country. They have given them greater powers now. They have renamed a lot of their place names to Basque words in the Spanish language. There are Basque words to describe the area, the language. You don't have to use Spanish, you can say Euskara, for example, rather than El País Vasco. Whereas in Catalonia it's still rumbling on a little bit about independence. One of the reasons they won't be happy to let it leave is that it is the richest region in Spain, because of the car manufacturing industry which is here, and textiles as well. And also Barcelona is the most visited city in the whole of Spain and one of the most visited in the world, so tourism. So for that reason, financially, the centralised government don't want Catalonia to leave. was doing some research on Italy, because previously, I mean, Italy isn't actually that old a country. I don't know my exact facts, so please don't quote me, but basically Italy was together at one point, but then separated into papal states. So this version of Italy hasn't been around for that long in its current form, particularly post-World War II when they lost land down here to Croatia and Slovenia. But yes, so Italy is an interesting one, because San Marino never joined Italy formally. It stayed its own independent nation. Venice, I read, Veneto, which used to be an extremely powerful European country in its own right, with land that stretched down here. This area, there is a small independence union movement, as there is a little bit in Lombardia as well. Again, it's Lombardy here, and to a lesser extent in Sardinia and Sicily. But in general terms, there isn't that much appetite of independence in Italy. I'm going to briefly mention Kosovo, which again is going to set the comment section alight. I did a video doing a deep dive into Kosovo recently for my patrons, and we talked about how it was part of Serbia. And from what I understand, ethnic Albanians were brought into this area to do farming and labouring, and then outnumbered over a long period of time the local Serbs, and therefore felt that they should rule themselves, had an independence vote, which was similar to what I talked about in Catalonia, completely denied by Serbia, but went ahead and they declared independence. So the Serbians say that this land is historically theirs, that ethnic Albanians didn't live there, they brought them in. There is a minority of Serbians who feel that they are not represented in local government, and it has caused problems because there are supposed to be a certain amount of Serbians in the Kosovan parliament to represent the ethnic Serbians that live there, and there was a problem with that recently. So yes, Serbia don't like the fact that Kosovo exists, don't recognise it. Neither does Spain, nor do Russia, but quite a lot of other countries do recognise it. Montenegro, on the other hand, had a very peaceful separation from Serbia. It was sort of amicable. The Montenegro gained independence. There is a region to the north called Vojvodina. I tried to do a little bit of research to find out whether that would ever go independent, and there wasn't really anything there. So I'm aware that Novi Sad and Vojvodina is a powerful area of Serbia that does have its own identity, but in general I don't think that that would become a new independent state. Alright. No, I can't. This one's not the right page. Well, we'll talk very briefly about Russia. Russia is a very complicated country. So Russia is the short term for the Russian Federation, which, as you can see, is absolutely enormous. It's the largest country on the planet. What happened was Russia was over here, and they brought mercenaries to drive eastwards, conquering the lands that they took over from the local tribes, which were separated and small, didn't used to work together, and isolated. And yeah, they basically just kept going and kept going. So Russia ended up actually in the north of America, and the states bought Alaska from Russia. So it did go over to the next continent, it was so large. It has also gained some territory from China, in Manchuria here, which didn't used to be the case. But all of these sections, you can see them sort of mapped out here with this red line. They are within themselves. Some of them have more powers than others. There are lots of different sort of concepts. There are some that act more as countries within a country. Others that are just provinces, krais. But yeah, there are some, for example, there was a separatist group down here in Chechnya, which was causing a lot of problems, setting bombs off in Moscow to try and get independence. They are quite close to the border with Georgia. They're a Muslim group, and another Muslim group, because many of the groups here are Muslim in Russia. The group is Samara's near here, Ufa. So I can't see it, Novgorod. But anyway, there's an area here. That is, it was the last sort of section to agree when the USSR broke up. They said, all right, well, we will be federal Russia, and then you'll have Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Ukraine, etc. And they were the last ones to agree, and they sent the army in, I think, because we nearly had like a little country here. I can't see it off the top of my head. Tatarstan is here somewhere. Kazan, there you are. So Kazan is the capital of Tatarstan, which is a Muslim area here, and there is a separatist movement there. But I read, with all the financial troubles that Russia is having at the moment, that the Far East is getting a little bit sick of being ignored. The transport links and infrastructure there is crumbling. It's not as good as it once was. And a lot of the money is just pumped into Moscow and the other surrounding areas. So, as a hearsay item, this area of Russia is growing discontent. Go this way because I'm trying to get a good shot of. Anyway, I'll come back to it. I do want to talk to you very briefly about Wales. There is a very growing independence movement in Wales, but it's still only about 20 to 30% in favour of independence. So Wales, very short history lesson for you. Basically, the island of Britain, as far as you can see, up to Glasgow, around here, there. This was all Wales at one point, including London. And basically we were invaded and pushed back, and most of the tribes then went to the hilly region of Wales as we were pushed back with the hordes of Vikings coming this way, and Cornwall. So that's why Cornish is the sister language of Welsh, and some crossed the sea to get away and went to Breton, Brittany. That's actually Normandy. Brittany's down here. So yeah, basically this used to be all Wales, and we were pushed back here, so we have our own history, our own culture, our own language, and we are very distinct. And over time, because Scotland, the Kingdom of Scotland and the Kingdom of England joined together, so Scotland had a lot more power. Scotland nowadays has a parliament. Wales still doesn't have an actual parliament. We have a Senedd, which is a senate, which has devolved powers, but not those of, we can't change certain rules like a parliament can. So we are sort of told what to do by Westminster here in London, and many of us, me included, are quite sick of it. So I'm a strong supporter, I have been since I was about 16 years old, of Welsh independence. So I am one of those sort of 30%. But yeah, it is, and this has happened really since COVID. It was only about 10-15% prior to that. But over the last couple of years, we've seen inequality happen a lot more in the UK. Scotland voicing their opinion on wanting to leave a lot more regularly. And I think people have started to wake up and think for themselves and say, why do we have to be a part of a second-class sort of citizen within the UK? So yeah, that's a really interesting sort of concept. I've got a lot of friends who don't agree with it, and I respect that view very much. And I do think that it would be very difficult if we were to go independent. We would be extremely poor to begin with. So yeah, it would be a struggle. I don't deny that, but I think in the long term, in like 50, 100 years, it would be actually a good decision for us to do that. Also, Cornwall, who I spoke about being a Celtic nation within the UK, has started, but I don't think it's anywhere near happening, to ask for having devolved powers similar to Wales as well, and to have its own Senate, to have some control over its local rule, which I think is an interesting thing. Okay, I was trying to find a good... I can't... try not to give it away either. Okay, go on. So we talked earlier on about the unification of Ireland, and actually something that I've read a lot about was the unification of Romania with Moldova. Okay, another quick history lesson for you. At one point these were one country, and actually, curiously, this part of Romania is still called Moldova. And then you have Transylvania over here, which is one of the largest parts, where Cluj-Napoca is located, and Timișoara. And then there's another area down here, I can't remember the name of this region. But basically there were like 4 regions that came together, but then Moldova, because of I think it's to do with the USSR, broke away. There are some Russian speakers here, but the vast majority of people speak Moldovan, which is basically Romanian. And there is a growing movement and sentiment, both within Romania and within Moldova, that a unification would actually be a really positive thing, particularly for Moldova, because Romania, of course, is a part of the EU, whereas Moldova is not, and it's the poorest country, if not the poorest, one of the poorest regions in the whole of Europe. So getting into Romania and then having access to the funds of the European Union, which basically the EU sends money to the poorest regions, to try and level them up. Wales got a lot of money from the EU when we were in the European Union before we had Brexit. So yeah, Moldova would financially benefit hugely, both from joining Romania itself, but actually from then being a part of the EU. And apparently the sentiment is growing in both regions for that movement. Okay, I've spoken exclusively about Europe in this video. There are lots of other things I could say about Europe as well, but I want to do somewhere away from Europe briefly. I want to talk to you about Somaliland, another place I did a deep dive on the other day in my Patreon only video. So this here, all of it, is Somalia. However, Somaliland sees itself as an independent nation which Somalia does not recognise. In fact, up until last December, no one recognised Somaliland as an independent nation, and I can't figure out why, for some reason in December of 2025, Israel decided to recognise the state of Somaliland. So that is one country that's got recognition, but it's been around for a long time. these were both regions that were ruled by, I believe the British ruled Somaliland and the Italians ruled Somalia. And then when they, however you want to put it, left, then the two decided to merge, but they felt in Somaliland that there was an imbalance of power, and a lot went to Mogadishu, the capital, and the locals weren't sort of represented fully and given a fair share of the pie, and so they decided to claim independence, but it's never been recognised up until December of last year by Israel. I don't know enough about Kashmir to get into that in this video, but there's an area here to the north which is claimed by both Pakistan and India, called Kashmir. I can't see it here clearly though. Lahore, so it must be... I can't see it, but I feel like it's up here somewhere. It's on the sort of... It's up here in the mountains, I believe. I can see some dotted lines, so I can see that there's a little bit of a dispute going on. Anyway, so yeah, there's a country here that after the British, again, it's usually got to do with the British leaving. After the British left, both countries rushed to claim that land for themselves, and neither has really come to an agreement on who it belongs to. Both vehemently state that it's a part of their country, and it's called Kashmir, like the textile. Western Sahara, I've got so many negative comments from Moroccans whenever I've mentioned Western Sahara. I did a little bit of a deep dive on it, and basically Morocco absolutely unequivocally claim this as their land. But internationally it's not seen to be theirs. However, Western Sahara doesn't really have much in way of independence or an independence movement or a government or anything like that. It's sort of a bit of land with local tribes that live there, but currently they're under Moroccan control. But I remember mentioning it, and there was a comment from a Moroccan that was like, I've never heard of this Western Sahara that you're talking about. That's Morocco. And I think to the extent that within Morocco, I think they just, every map they view just has Morocco like that, and not Western Sahara. It does have a flag if you look for it. So that is potentially a country that could exist in the future, or not. It could become part of Morocco fully, but at the minute it's in this sort of state of don't know what's happening with it. And I think the last one for today then, I read somewhere recently that there is a region of Papua New Guinea that has had an independence vote and is going to become independent. So we should very soon have a new country in this area of the world. Papua New Guinea is a bit of a strange entity. It used to be a part of Australia. The western part of the island is a part of Indonesia, and Papua New Guinea is its independent nation, but now it's going to become two, because we've got Papua New Guinea and then we're going to have a new area. Interestingly. There we are then. that's what I'm going to talk about. I could go into more detail of other things in a future video if you want me to, but I quite enjoy just chatting and talking about things that I've read. Pray for the comment section to not be absolutely awful. I don't think I said anything particularly bad, did I? I've upset a lot of people and I didn't mean to. Like I said, I'm just reading, just saying things from memory that I've read. I'm not supporting or denying the right for any of these things to happen. It's just very interesting to me to read these articles and learn about potentially new countries in the future. Both ones that have emerged from another country and ones that have formed from the merging of two countries. Okay, thank you so much for watching. If you're not completely enraged and hate me, then maybe click like, and because it's going to get quite a lot of dislikes, and leave me a comment as well. And if you made it this far, then maybe put a little heart in the comment section, because we'll know that that means that you're one of the non-ragey comments, and you made it all the way to the end of the video. You can subscribe here. I've done a couple of very popular videos talking about controversial themes in the past, so I do like to touch on the topics every now and again. And I hope you enjoyed the video and learning something new before bed. Thanks so much everyone for watching. Take care. Join me on Patreon and see you soon.